Alright, and welcome to the pay-to-play report for Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor. The idea behind the pay-to-play reports is for me to do a report on a game that I play that's pay-to-play. In other words, you have to pay for the game to play it, right? There's also the free-to-play report that focuses on free-to-play games, obviously, which I do. It's different from the I do them differently from a pay-to-play reports. Now, and one of the different aspects of a pay-to-play report is the fact that I will be focusing on the older games on the pay-to-play report for simple reason is that I do not believe that every single gamer is interested in the latest and greatest games. For simple reason is that many of them are too expensive to acquire, and there's also plenty of people who are, do game coverage for those games. So what happens is that, as far as I see from my interaction with people that I know from those from my friends who are gamers, is that not everybody wants to pay out 70, 60 or $50 for a newest game. Quite often, which could be also a broken game, as it happens. Rather that people are pretty much willing to wait for a while and to buy an older game after it gotten fixed. And this is my approach has been pretty much the same way as well. I find that the game at the very beginning when it's actually released is not the same as the game, let's say, a year later, because different patches came through. There would be DLC available that changes the gameplay. There would be also mods available, and I do add mods to the games that I play for simple reason is that they do, number one, fix bugs that the developers did not fix. They improve the graphics, and therefore that's pretty important to me overall. And there's also, of course, the gameplay modification mods, but I do not really focus on them during the pay-to-play reports because they change the whole aspect of the game, and that's separate as far as I'm concerned. I might focus on those things later on. Now that I give you the idea exactly what's a pay-to-play report and what it consists of, let's get right into the game itself. So the Shadow of Mordor is an open world game, and I completely finished it. I played all of it except one DLC, which is the Trials of War, and this is less of a story-based DLC and more of a challenges type of DLC. The DLC, as you can see, creates different challenges for a player to complete, and by giving them either the time limits as they can, or limiting your health, or limiting what they can do, or what character they play as, in a way that actually is something interesting. I believe that adds more challenge to the game that I found lacking in the main game story mode. But let's get into the actual gameplay, because this is what the game is really usually attracts itself with. It's a gameplay. It's a main kind of a attraction point. As I already mentioned, it's a main selling point of a game usually made when the games are marketed as ability what you can do. In this case, the game is, as I mentioned, is an open world game where your main focus is on killing orcs, and you can really do that in a bunch of different ways. Like you can see here, I can use a dagger to kill an orc, and this is called a stealth kill. I can use a sword to kill orcs. Right there, there's a special attack moves that I can exercise to kill orcs again. And some orcs actually can get frightened and will run away from me. Now, in addition to the sword and dagger, I can actually use another way of killing the orcs, and that's with a bow. You see, I can shoot an orc in the head with a bow, or I can shoot something that's explodable. In this case, the campfires are explodable. Other things that are explodable are, the usual things such as barrels. I don't see one around here, but doesn't really matter. So, in a way, there's quite a variety of things to do. Another way to kill orcs is to actually get astride of wildlife, and there's one right here. It's actually pretty convenient. And once you on top of on top of the wildlife, you can go around and kill orcs on, using mounted combat. That's possible. There's other different monsters that is possible to ride, and it's pretty enjoyable to do so actually. See right there, I can feed an orc to this dog-like, wolf-like type of animal. It has its own name. It's called Karagor, and I'm still able to shoot from the top of Karagor. And you might have noticed something about the bow, something that I noticed myself as well. And it's the fact that actually I won't stay on top of it. Is that the fact that the bow is pretty overpowered? I can really go into against a bunch of orcs and just shoot them all with a bow. This kind of decreases the challenge of the game for me. That's one of the things that I had an issue with, and I think this is something that's kind of destroys, as I mentioned, the difficulty. It makes the game less interesting. Yes, at first it's kind of great. Oh, I can kill all these orcs, using ranged attacks, but then eventually it becomes boring. Now, the bow, as you can see, actually slows down time. As you can see, the orcs stop moving in the real time. They move much more slower. Now, of course, this ability is limited, and I just run out. Now, all I have is now they move in the real time, and it's much harder to shoot the orcs when they're moving in the real time, especially if they're much more distant. What controls my timer? Well, it's actually controlled based on the upgrades that I purchased. Here they're called attributes. Now the attributes are purchased using this internal currency, and I'll tell you a bit later how I got it. You hear the upgrades for health, for number of arrows I have. Now this is focus exactly. This is specifically the time I have, during which the time passes slowly while I'm aiming with the bow. And then there's also this following. Abilities to unlock slots on the weapons for runes, and these things are here. Right here we're talking about the runes. You can see them represented over here on the sword, and they have all different abilities. That runes grant type of modifiers, whether to the weapon or just generally to the character, such as there's modifiers on all the 3 different weapons. The modifiers make me able to take less damage from ranged attacks. Other modifiers might make it so that I'm able to kill when I kill the orcs in certain ways to recover a certain amount of health. All this eventually leads to a certain issue that I found, that the character becomes overpowered. Now, how do we get the currency to purchase all the attributes? And we'll talk later about the runes. Well, the attributes are purchasable through completing mostly the side missions. Right? The side missions are visible on the map. In my case, you're not going to see them because they've all been completed. There's 2 certain side missions, which is called the challenges, a survival challenge, which is basically a collectathon of collecting herbs. I just collected one of the herbs. When you saw me do that below, I will show you another collection right here. The herbs pretty much heal you, so as you collect them, you get your health back, but you also complete the survival challenge. The other challenge, the completion. The other challenge that I completed, the hunting challenge, and some of them actually could be completed alongside the main mission. Some of them don't need to be completed alongside the main missions. I don't think you can all complete them separately, but it's pretty much saves time if you complete them alongside the main missions, because main missions will lead you to being exposed to wildlife that you need to hunt. Now, other main missions include a usual collectathon of items, or in this case, let's see, I'll show you here. This is one of them. That's basically collecting this image. You collect parts of this image and eventually get all of it. And then there's also the artifacts. Collection of them gives you a certain amount of lore about the world that you are in. It's okay, but it does not really add that much to the game, especially the image one. Adds little anything to the game. The artifacts at least add certain amount of knowledge and some knowledge about the side characters in the game. Now, another two types of missions are basically rescuing humans who've been enslaved by the works, and there's those which are actually quite a boring type of missions. They're pretty similar and not that different. And there's one that focuses on your weapons. The mission, the idea is that you use your weapon and kind of build a story for it, and eventually your weapon becomes upgraded. Well, it looks becomes upgraded. I'm not sure if the damage dealt by the weapon is any better. Now, again, that I will talk about issues with the side missions more in the part 2 of the report, which I'll be recording separately, because it will contain spoilers. I don't want to do any spoilers in this section of the report. But I just found I will just say that and that's something I will reiterate, is that this side missions I found them to be sometimes pretty repetitive. And the issue is that as you complete them and you get that currency to get these upgrades, you become really overpowered to such an extent that you pretty much can run into the enemy, with a bunch of enemies, and just kill them outright without much of an issue. Right? Look, see, and you can say that, oh, you feel overpowered now because you completed the game, you got everything. Well, I got most of this stuff. Sorry, I got most of this stuff here even before I was done halfway through the game. I got most of the stuff here, which is abilities. Again, all of them except the ones that are locked in by the story, I think before I even was again halfway through the game. Because when I was playing the game, I was just literally running around and killing orcs, and doing so builds up this experience points ability bar, which grants me ability to unlock here as a different points. This is what once you get fill up the bar each time, you get ability to unlock 1 point, and each tier of this abilities is unlocked as I kill the captains. So who are the captains? Well, you saw one image here. These are the captains here. You have 3 rows of them, and then you have another row of war chiefs. Killing them also grants you runes. I killed few of them actually while I was preparing for the video, and I don't see. Maybe I should go around and find one to kill. But well, I can see they are on the map here. The runes are right there. You can see the sword icons. The icon for the sword rune, because I killed the captain there. I did not collect the rune, but that's basically the captains provide me with the runes. Let's see if I can find one and kill you for one. Let's see if there's any one of them that's close by. All pretty far away, and I just gave up my ride. Well, this guy is close by. Right, war chiefs actually have captains as bodyguards. Those are the lines that you see there. And so let's go. I'm gonna locate the captain right now. Right there is the captain. And let's start it off. I'm just gonna use a campfire to explode, and now captains are supposed to be some kind of a type of stronger orcs. And you can see now also there's another part of the captains is that their personality. Here the captain is actually telling me something. It's kind of a more of a his personality trait. If I would have gotten killed by the captain before, he would have reminded me at this point saying that, by the way, I killed you. If he killed me quite a few times, he would tell me that he's getting kind of tired of killing me. Right there, I got a rune, I pick it up, done. Runes improve, as I said, the damage, give me damage modifiers, give me ability to recover health. So the more of them the more captains I kill, the more badass my character becomes, which leads again to the issue I overall said, is that I become overpowered and the gameplay becomes boring because now there is no challenge. Example is, I'm going to go run into the stronghold. The strongholds are literally basically the places where there's lots of orcs, and I'm just going to go pick a fight. I run out of bell shots. No problem, I can just, kill them even without that. I'm gonna let this guy ring a bell so that he'll bring other orcs forward. And now the orcs are gonna come running to fight me. Hopefully, come on. Now that gives me some elf shots if I need them. See, and you see, basically, I got all these orcs coming through. There's different orcs actually, you can see. There's some that are just a normal ones, there's some that can carry shields. And there's also the ones that actually can even defeat my attack and counter attack me, so you have to stun them before you can kill them. All that of course makes it interesting at first, but eventually once you become once you gain a lot of abilities, the combat is pretty easy and there's nothing difficult about it. So at one point I decided, okay, well, if having such an easy time, I need to increase the difficulty. And one way is to do so is to, when you go after the captains, is to issue death threats at them. I did that, and as I mentioned before, the war chiefs actually use captains as bodyguards. So I decided, well, let's make it even harder. What if I issue death threats to let's say this guy has 2 bodyguards, right? What if I issue death threats to these 2 guys? They each will get 5 bodyguards. And then overall, that means when I attack the war chiefs, they come along together with 10 guys. Well, that's not what happened. They just came along by themselves. But issuing death threats increases the standing of the orc, and that means I'm getting a much more rare, much more powerful rune for myself. So in the end, I was getting runes without much of a challenge. Again, even if I attack a captain with 5 bodyguards, because I have the bow ability, I'm able to kill off the bodyguards before they much of a trouble for me. So again, that's pretty much an issue for me. What's the difficulty there? Even without upgrading the number of arrows, you already have 6 arrows from the beginning, which means that 5 bodyguards are not much of a problem for you. Now, the gameplay improves in DLC. As I mentioned, the Trials of War includes certain limitations and so includes timers, and that in a way makes the game more challenging. Now, the gameplay, the missions in themselves, here the main storyline becomes pretty boring again because they're not that difficult, partially also because there's not that much variety you can do. You just pretty much end up at the end quite often running into the host of the orcs and just killing them because you have the ability to do so. Well, if I'm overpowered, what's the point of me even trying to do it somehow differently? There's not much fun. Yeah, I can kill 1 guy or 2 guys with stealth and kill some guys with bow in them, but in the end I just run into them and just cut them all with a sword. Doesn't matter if it's a war chief or somebody or anybody like this. I see this guy actually can, held off my attack, and now I need to do a counter attack against him before I attack him. But in the end, the limit on what I can do when I'm completing the missions actually was terrible. So now the Lord of the Hunt, or the Master of the Hunt DLC gave me a higher variety. It actually allowed me to do something that the main missions made it difficult for me, and that is use wildlife to attack the orcs. Basically, quite often I found that when I bring us, I ride some kind of wildlife to the mission point, when I start the mission, that wildlife disappears, so I can't use it to complete the mission. I have to find one within the mission boundary, which is not always possible. Now, in the Lord of the Hunt, they quite often make it possible for you to find something at the mission by either providing you from the very beginning, saying, here you can use this guy, or that wildlife will be very close by that I'm able to use in that to complete the mission. Overall, the mission variety was greater. There was more, more difficult missions because, they're given timers, you're given constraints, and such. It's actually felt interesting to complete them. Now, the Bright Lord DLC also had a certain amount of interest for me because, number one, it debuffed my character. I no longer was as pretty much buffed as I am right here, and was in the main storyline. So it made it much more difficult for me to run into the whole group of orcs and kill them. It did have its own ways of because it gives you different powers that actually kind of counteracted that to a certain extent. If I didn't, but I kept forgetting to use them, so it made it slightly more difficult for me to play in that way. It's more interesting and more fun. And the story in the Bright Lord actually grabbed me more than it grabbed me here. I will talk about the story later on and the fact that it wasn't that interesting for me in the main storyline. Now, controls for the game. Well, the game could be controlled in two ways. You can use a controller, an Xbox controller, or you can use a mouse and keyboard. I tried the Xbox controller first. I found that I didn't like it. For one reason is that I ran into a side mission that required me to use a bow, and I was finding it extremely hard to aim using the bow. There's also a number of other side missions that require like this, a precise shooting to kill off a wildlife or something like that. And well, I found it extremely difficult to do so with an Xbox controller. I found it extremely easy to do with a mouse and keyboard. So for that reason, I decided to use mouse and keyboard, and I believe this is a much easier to control the character, except of course it leads to certain issues, such as inability for the game to realize what I want to do. And the reason is that because the mouse and keyboard controls are not the same way as the controls. The controllers have a limited number of buttons, and that's possible, but the keyboard has quite a few buttons, yet let's say my ability to run fast and to jump and to dodge are all mapped to the space key. So if I want to climb something, sometimes I end up jumping and looking like an idiot at that rather than climbing. Sometimes when I want to pick up something, I end up trying to grab something in the air, because the key for grabbing the orcs and for picking up, let's say, a plant like here are the same. See, I could be slightly, if I'm poised slightly wrong, it might not register that. I might be standing there like an idiot trying to grab for something in the air. Well, this just for me, just horrible. What if I don't want to grab? And final issue I always had was the precision. When you're fighting a group of orcs, what if you want to grab specific orc, or you want to target specific orc, but the game says like that the orc slightly to the left is the one that you want, is the one that's your main target? Well, that becomes annoying. So overall, this is basically my type of gripes with the controls, because given the fact that I have a whole range of keys on the keyboard, the controls could have been done better. You know, they could have been spread around more. Now, let's talk about the visuals and the game world itself. But this is an open world game, and the game world is great. Visually, look at this, it's great. I'm not playing on the highest settings, there's ultra settings for textures. I'm actually unable to do so because my mid-level machine does not have enough VRAM to handle the ultra section. So you need actually 6 gigabytes of VRAM. I only have 3, sadly, so therefore I was unable to go all the way up on the graphics with this, but this is pretty good in itself. The world feels alive. You can see flying, there's a wildlife that flies, there's spiders that scroll around, there's rats could be found, orcs walking around talking. Eventually though the orc banter will get annoying because you will hear all of it, and it becomes extremely annoying in the Bright Lord DLC because orcs keep saying the same things even though you're playing as an elf rather than a human. Kind of a letdown there. Not that much though. In that, you know, the areas are different enough. There's enough construction, and this is one of the only areas that you are available to you. This is what you can say mostly dirt and mud type of area. There's also a lush green type of area available, which makes it well, I think to me it was a bit more pleasing to the eye. But overall, it looks the game looks great in that sense. It is based on Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, but as far as I know from what research I did, it's more of a homage than clearly based in the lore, because a lot of things here contradict the lore itself. But it's workable. They keep it consistent internally in the actual the game itself. Now, let's talk about another issue I have, and this is something that will be personal to me. I believe it's because I have an issue with the combat portrayal in the game, and that is a sword combat. I actually do take classes in the medieval sword play, so I'm actually taking classes at local what's called the Historical Imperial Martial Arts group, and we focus on the Italians' longsword. And so to me, some of the things are just wrong. Right? You can see in some finishing moves, you see a character using a dagger or a sword in a way where it's the character sticks the sword right through the orc into the earth. Now this is not here, but it does happen often enough. Now this is a very, very bad thing. Why would you use a sharp, your weapon is what keeps you alive. Why would you stick it in the earth where with the sharp end of the end of the weapon could get damaged? You wouldn't really do it. No character, no swordsman would actually do it. The other part is here, you see, is what's called overstriking, overpaying. It looks great on screen in a way, but the character is just swinging too wildly. You don't do that. You kind of try to keep your sword between you and the enemy. You do not try to overparry, overswing, because that just exposes you to the enemies here. Another issue is, of course, where the sword is on the character. The character is carrying what appears to be a long sword on the back. Well, it's impossible to draw a long sword from the back. There's actually internet videos which discuss that, but you can try it yourself. Just try to strap a stick to your back and try to draw it out. You're really actually doing a horrible thing for yourself. Even if you somehow manage to draw it out, it will be very awkward and it limits your fighting ability. Having a sword at your hip actually opens you to more cutting attacks. An Italian manual of sword fighting has actually a whole section where it focuses on the cutting attacks from the hip. it shows you, you know, the availability of it. And if you're drawing the sword from the back, you just limit it to really one attack, a downward swing. So therefore, this is something that's actually quite popular in games and movies and television. And it's pretty much a very laughable thing because it's very unrealistic. Now I understand why the game did this here. It's because they wanted kind of to, you know, to create a character that's not constrained when they the character is climbing around. But maybe if you have a character that's climbing around a lot, maybe they shouldn't be using a sword. Maybe the weapon of choice should be something else rather than a sword. Now another one good thing that I did notice here is this. You see, when I actually block, the character does perform a counter attack, which is correct. You do try to perform counter attack right there. You see, the guy is taking a sword in the earth, and that's not something you're gonna do. Now, the idea is behind the when you do block an attack from enemies that you perform counter attack. That's something actually is realistic, and that's something that I really like. But except that you don't really do blocks when you fence. That's extremely rare thing to do because you try to actually, when you do a counter attack, you try to attack in such a way as to not block, because that takes away, that slows you down, but actually to do an attack in mid of an opponent's attack, which will move the weapon away from you, opponent's weapon away from you, and attack the enemy at the same time. Now it's kind of visible here, but it's not as as clear overall in the game. And so this is some of my personal gripes with the combat in the game. Now let's talk about story. And a story I'm not going to talk about here while playing the game. I would rather actually go to a different do a different section, to a different way of presenting this. So one way I will be talking about this is actually through the host of slides I have prepared, partially because I think it's easier to talk about story there rather than just running around and focusing on killing the orcs. And the story overall is interesting. It's an interesting story is created there. There's quite a theme of corruption by power. You have this given in the story itself. That seems to be what the developers try to get across, the idea of morality of actions. Do the end justify the means, or when do the means don't justify the ends anymore? But the pacing of the story and the overall presentation of the story make it boring, and you kind of lose those themes. They're not really well developed overall. And the reason the pacing is bad is that the side missions do not really connect that much to the story itself. So if you go away and do side missions, you kind of lose the track of the story. It's not, the main missions themselves are not that great in terms of developing the story forward, but at least they try, right? And this is extremely disappointing for me because when I started playing the game, the intro was amazing. The intro actually justifies the whole idea of revenge. You see the family of the character get murdered, and you see that he had actually a very good relationship with his family members. He had a very loving relationship with his wife. He loved his son. All that is presented in a short space of an intro, but it's presented really well. It really embedded me into the character at first, but then the rest of the game kind of detached me, and slowly I started to lose interest and started getting bored because gameplay became boring to me because I'm just too much of an overpowered character. I'm just running around killing everything inside, and the story itself no longer developing the themes that I thought they were here. That to me again didn't feel that interesting. The Bright Lord DLC actually improved on that. It really went into the whole themes of the corruption of power there, of the means, whether the means justify the ends. It did that very well. Here, it's very weakly presented. I will talk about that more in the part 2 of the report because, again, I don't want to do the spoilers right now on the game. Now, again, some of the issues I had with the story is that there were characters introduced in through the main missions, but I just did not feel the reason for those characters. Why did you choose to introduce this character? Why did you build up lore for this one if it's the character is going to be gone in two missions, main mission, that's it. And it was anybody could have done in that sense. Why not do more of interactions, develop it further? No, none of it was done. The Nemesis system. I talked about it a bit. I showed you the captains. I showed you the war chiefs. Yeah, it's great. It personalizes this mini bosses. It gives them personality. They remember you if they killed you. Only if they killed you. If you died next to them, they won't remember that. But in the end, it does not really add much to the story. There's not much of an impact if I kill a bunch of them. It does, it buffs me as a character, but overall, on the story-wise level, it did not really give much of an impact. I didn't feel it. It's not like the orcs react somehow differently if you kill so many different captains. It's not like they try to take some kind of different measures. So if you kill lots of captains with bows, suddenly, the orcs have type of kind of devise some kind of countermeasure to that. No, it doesn't happen. It's not there. So why, and the idea is that, oh yeah, but you can kill this orcs different ways. Why does it matter if the story in the game does not reflect that? It doesn't matter to me. Yeah, it's great, for me when I'm playing the game. It might be great when I'm discussing with my friends who played the game. But if I'm discussing with a friend of mine who plays, let's say, generally simulators or city building games, he won't even care. He wouldn't be able to understand when I'm telling him, oh, I used the wildlife to kill this guy by eating him. It's like, okay, is that difficult in the game? I don't know. He doesn't know. He never played the game. So in those cases, you really discuss the way the game is presented, the gameplay mechanics, and you discuss the story and the themes. And the story and the themes is that's what you will be discussing overall when you're discussing it outside of the gaming people. Something that you're gonna have a more of a deeper discussion, because not everybody plays video games, but you can talk about the themes of corruption by power and the themes of when the ends justify the means, regardless with anybody. You can bring that topic up, and you can bring it saying like, this is something that is a wide discussion. So therefore, the story in this kind of games is important in terms of keeping it kind of more interesting for me to play. And so that it creates some deeper interactions that I can have beyond just saying, oh, well, I played this game, and other people are like, okay, well, yeah, great, it's a video game. Because to some people that still is. When you go back to them and tell them, but by the way, presents such a story in such a way, it's great. I use that example when people talk to me about science fiction, how all science fiction is all for kids. And then I bring up an example from science fiction books that I read, and say, oh, well, here it is, this is a science fiction book, then they explored such and such idea. I bring up quite often the Isaac Asimov example from Positronic Man, where you have a robot discussing the ideas behind, difference between the baby and a fetus. So at what point does a fetus become a living life form? You have a single paragraph where Isaac Asimov runs through in the sci-fi setting, because you have a robot discussing it, thinking this through, ideas behind the pro-life, anti-abortionist movements and the pro-choice movement. He runs through them, decides that it's a very difficult question, and does not even provide an answer. But this is something that's great about when you do in any type of medium. This is what you can go out and discuss and say, well, look, this is what's a power of the medium is, and this is what you can do. The game does not do that here. I did not feel it. As I said, the Bright Lord DLC did better, but can I really justify purchasing a game and recommending purchasing a game just because DLC is great, but the main storyline is not? I don't know. I didn't feel like that. So for me, the fact that even before I was done halfway through the game, I was so easily overpowered that I was really killing. I killed one of the bosses without much of a struggle. It wasn't much of a struggle for me to do so at all. I didn't feel any difficulty there. And then, fine, maybe that's fine, but if the storyline kind of made up for it, but it didn't either. So in the end, the game became really boring. It became type of a chore for me when I was playing it. It's like, okay, well, I don't know, I want to get through this and see if there's more to it. Okay, let's play through this and see if there's more to it. Sadly, the more to it is the DLC parts. So from that perspective, I would say this is what, as far as I thought of the game, and I guess it's up to you for you to decide if you want to play this. And you really like open world games and you don't really care about much the story. Maybe this is a game for you, but for me, it was a disappointing game. I know that they're making a second one. Maybe the second one would be better. I don't know, but I'm not feeling like I'm going to be buying the second one right now. They haven't convinced me. Alright, so that's it for my pay-to-play report on Middle Earth Shadow of Mordor. Thank you for watching and thank you for listening.